Welcome to the kitchen where we make everything but pasta. Apples are in season and that calls for apple pie. Today I'm going to share with you my very own apple pie recipe and I hope you like it. To make your homemade crust, you're going to need 2.5 cups of white flour, all-purpose flour, half a teaspoon of salt, half a cup of cold butter, half a cup of cold shortening. I'm using vegetable shortening, 3 tablespoons of sour cream, and a 1/4 cup of ice cold water. For the filling, I'm using 6 honeycrisp apples today. You could also use Granny Smith or Portland or Macintosh. Half a cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon powder, 2 tablespoons of softened butter, a pinch of nutmeg, and some coarse sugar. So let's get started. So we're going to start with the crust. We'll take the flour, add the salt, and just whisk it to mix the salt up. Now I'm going to take the pastry blender and cut the butter and the vegetable shortening. So you're going to cut the butter and the shortening until the dough forms pea-sized pieces in there, kind of like what it's doing now. This looks about right, as you can see. You can still see some pieces of butter, but you don't want to mix it to a smooth paste. This will give our pastry the flakiness that we're looking for. I'm going to now mix the sour cream with the water. Now I'm going to drizzle the liquid over the flour. And just use a fork to mix the water with the flour and form a coarse dough. We may need a little bit more water, but just maybe a few drops to form the dough. You can use your hands now to bring the dough together. I'm just going to add a little bit more water here. Looks a little dry. You don't want to overmix it, so just try to bring the flour together to form the dough. So now we have the dough here. It's fairly soft. I'm going to divide that in 2 sections. Wrap them in the saran wrap and put them in the fridge for about an hour to be chilled. So to prepare the apples, we're going to use the apple core and slicer, which will remove the skin and slice the apples at the same time. And I'm just going to cut them, put a slit in there so that they just open up in halves. We'll continue until we've done all the apples. Okay, so now I have all the apples that I've cored and sliced. Now I'm going to put together the ingredients for the filling together. So that's the sugar, cornstarch, cinnamon, and I'm just going to rasp pinch of nutmeg here. Smells delicious. And a pinch of salt. I'm just gently going to mix it. And just before I'm ready to put the apples in the pie, I will add this mix to the apples and just coat them. If you add them too early, you'll notice that the sugar starts melting, and it makes the pie very liquidy. Our pie dough is nice and cold, and we're just going to sprinkle some flour on the surface here and roll out the bottom half of the pie crust. Roll it to about 1/8 of an inch thick, and then transfer it to a pie plate. And we will leave about 1/4 to 1/2 inch of an overhang. And since we're going to use a lattice, we're going to then roll it into the lattice, so we don't need a lot of overhang. Otherwise, we get a lot of dough at the edges of the pie. Okay, so we now have the bottom crust of the pie ready. We're now going to prepare our apples. Now that we're ready to put the apples inside the pie crust, I'm going to mix the sugar mixture and into the apples, and just gently mix it up so that all the apples are coated. You just toss with your hands as well, as there will be some sugar mixture at the bottom so that you can get all the apples coated properly. And then transfer it to your pie crust. I like to scrape every little bit of sugar and cinnamon from this bowl so that I don't lose any of the deliciousness for this apple pie. Dot the butter on the apples. This kitchen smells amazing right now. The smell of cinnamon and apples and the sugar is just mouth-watering. To make the lattice, we will roll this dough and cut them into strips. So sprinkle some flour on the surface and a little bit on the dough itself, and then let's roll it. We'll also roll this crust to about 1/8 of an inch thick. I'm going to do a 1 inch thick strip. Okay, so to make the lattice, I'm going to start with 6 strips in one direction. Take the first, the third, and the 5th one and add the crosswise, bring them back. Repeat until all the strips have been latticed over. Cut the edges off with a pair of scissors, and then we'll roll the strips into the crust. Fold them underneath so that it makes a nice border there. brush with an egg wash over the pastry. And lastly, we'll sprinkle some coarse sugar for the final touch. And our pie is now ready to go into the oven at 450 degrees in a non-convection oven. But if you have a convection oven, I usually go down by 25 degrees. So since I have a convection oven, I'm going to put it in the oven at 425 degrees for 65 minutes on the bottom third of the oven. So the pie is out of the oven. It smells and looks delicious. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe to our channel for more delicious recipes. Thanks for watching. Bye.